welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, ReadersMagnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, ReadersMagnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank ReadersMagnet and everybody that's involved. I love ReadersMagnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernie McAuley, coming to you from the rainy Pacific Northwest on the shores of the Puget Sound this afternoon. I am the author of 2 books so far, hopefully a third and a fourth one later on, first part next year and later on next year. The Shadows of Sawtooth Ridge. It's a story of a POW that was in Vietnam. He spent 4 years in the prison in North Vietnam. He comes home, and his wife has just passed away just a few months prior to him coming home. And he's now a father of 2 children, returning to Montana after he comes home to the family ranch, which he had bought. And the second one is of his daughter, who follows in his footsteps, Navy aviator. And it's my latest. Thank you. Good afternoon to you. I appreciate the time. I'm fine. I'm great. My wife is sitting here keeping an eye on me, so I should be doing better than I normally am, I guess. But beyond Sawtooth Ridge, it's a story of Joni, and it's daughter of Larry Becker. She follows in her father's footsteps and becomes a naval pilot. And that's basically a story of a woman in a man's world. And to you, Adam, hello to you too. I appreciate time. I appreciate your tuning in to me. I really appreciate it. I have one more thing. I showed you a couple of pictures yesterday of my self on a horse, and also showed a couple other pictures from one of my grandparents. Hey, how are you doing? Appreciate it. Boy, there's some great names out there I can hardly pronounce. Keenuber, Australia. I'm sorry, I mispronounced that word or that name. But I have one more picture to show you this afternoon. This is an earlier picture. I just printed it up a few minutes ago. It's of me back in my earlier days. I told you earlier that I was a packer. I was a dude wrangler, they call it, in Glacier National Park back in the late 60s, just before I went into the service. Thanks. I appreciate it, Darlia. Sometimes I think you might have to help me pronounce some of those names. There's some really difficult ones. I just want to tell you, Dariela, I hope I pronounced that right. It's nice to see you here too. It's nice to see somebody here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. There's a couple of things in my books, both books, in fact, and it's makes it kind of interesting. The winter feeding of the cattle, the branding of the cattle, and also there's calving of the cattle. Awesome photo. Thank you. I appreciate it, Rachel. Thanks, Kits Romero. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you looking in on me this afternoon. I appreciate it. I try to put myself, in fact, I do put myself into my books. All the books are written in the first person. All my stories are written in the first person. They're all fiction, but it's a dream world, but yet it's a real world out there. Put yourself in the picture. If you're writing a book similar to mine, which is fiction, it's easier to put yourself into your writing. It's easier to put yourself into your story, enter in your story. My stories are of stories that I've known, heard about over the last 30, 40 years, working with the airlines, also doing other things, school, working at the school. After I retired from Northwest Airlines back in 2005, I went to work down the street from the Griffin to the school. It was 1 mile to work every morning, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I love my students, and just seeing them and each day was really quite interesting. I enjoyed every minute of it. But going back to ranching, if there's about 4 or 5 different things that's in it. We have in my books, both books, in fact, it has the spring cattle drive to the summer pasture. It has the winter cattle drive coming home from the summer pasture. It has the haying. I don't know if some of you, that's basically it's working in the fields, is stacking hay and bringing the hay in for the cattle in the wintertime. It has the harvesting of the wheat. I remember back when, one of the times I was on strike with Northwest Airlines, we hauled wheat out of some of the ranches up in that area to central Washington, where they were put on a barge and taken down the Columbia River to ships. And it was I've driven over the road truck. I've at one time flew small airplanes. I've did just about everything. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East after I left Great Falls doing Mac charters. It's every bit of it is a story. It's a lot of my experiences put together in these stories. So it's use your imagination, but yet at the same time, put yourself in a story. Sometimes it makes it really interesting. Jenix asked me, "What inspired you to start writing?" When I was in the service, I ended up at the end of my service being in a hospital here in Washington State, the Madigan General Hospital, for 5 months. And there was other things to do, but I sat down and started writing a story just to take up the time. And it was basically on my last trip after my grandfather passed away to our ranch where we were raised at, 14,000 acres out in eastern Montana on the prairies. It was my last trip out there, and it was one I wanted to remember, so I sat down and wrote about it. And I really wanted, I guess, about that time, I did want to be a writer, but I had another little problem. If you haven't heard already, I have dyslexia, and I didn't find out till later on in life that I had it. I did some writing in high school, but what writing I did in high school, one was was for Veterans Day. They have a decoration or a contest back there. And one thing the teacher asked me, says, "Did your mother write this for you?" And it was kind of an insult to me, and it kind of stopped me from writing for a long time. Yes, they are. The characters inspired or based on real life people. Yes and no. They are, and yes and no, they aren't. Yes. This is another question, a quick question. Do you have anything special that you're focusing on this year? Yes, I am. In fact, it's on my printer right now, and it's kind of Larry Becker. If you remember, if you saw his story or read his story, uh, when he returned back to Montana, he was a single father of two, and this story is of a young lady who kind of chased him for 23 years. She was became a reporter. She was in rodeo with high school and college rodeo with Larry Becker. And she kind of always kept track of him through the years. And she ended up helping Larry designing, or not really designing, but taking on working on in his home, his log home that needed to be vamping after before he moved his family to the ranch. But it's stories of Michael. Let's go back to Michael, if I can go back to Michael. What does literary success look like to you, Michael? I believe literary success to me is having a television movie, believe it or not. I think Larry Becker's story and continuation of his story might make a great, I've been told, would make a great Hallmark movie. It's one of the television stations I watch quite regularly, my wife and myself. And it's kind of a good station to watch. And that's what it looks like to me. I'd like to see my books out there. We have one local Washington writer who has had a couple of her stories on the Hallmark Channel, and I'm kind of hoping and wishing and cross my fingers and that I'll be able to get that to that point at one time with these books I'm writing. That's what it looks like. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate your question. Yes, Clint's Handel, thank you. Do you have a website? I want to know more about your journey as an author and about your fishing. Hey, I almost forgot about that one. Yes, I do have a website. It's Bernie McAuley books.com, and it's there. It's ReadersMagnet set it up for me, and they did a very good job. I'm very proud of it. I can't find those pictures from yesterday. I stopped writing after I left the service, and I eventually, after all my life and so forth, I eventually moved to this place in in Washington, and we have a local group here, writers, and they kind of encouraged me to take it on. And the first book I wrote, the grammar wasn't that great. One of my neighbors, who's a child psychologist, says, "Hey, Bernie, I'll edit your books for you," and that's what he did. My covers are done by another friend of mine, Rachel Firkins, and I'm very thankful. August Cooper, I'm happy to see you live here in the Festival of Storytellers. I'm happy to be here. I really am. I kind of bypassed it last year because I didn't think my book was good enough, but here I am. Your book is quite interesting from the front cover down to its back cover. I love how it was designed and created. Kudos to your publisher. Thank you. The back cover of the book, that was taken by, the picture was taken by a friend of mine. Him and I decided we were going down by the sound one night. We have a trail down to the sound. And that picture was taken down there. I thought somewhere along here from earlier today. Oh, yes. Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm back with you. Fishing. Yes, I love fishing. I love dipping the fly into that is the Bitterroot River in western Montana, south of Missoula, Montana, in the Bitterroot Valley down there. And I, even though I must have, fish must have knew I was fishing by a game warden that afternoon. It was more of a social time than it was a fishing time, but it was fun. It really was. Yes, Kritz, it has. Has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself? Yes, I have. I think it's given me a lot of courage to continue on. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the time. My wife has Alzheimer's, so it's kind of it's a great outlet for as I'm concerned, but it's also something I really, really enjoy. What is the most difficult part of your writing process? My grammar. It's hard. I'm reading my next story to my wife, and I'm reading out loud. I gotta get through. I said, "Whoops, did I foul up there?" So it's keeping your imagination going at the same time, but also looking back on your own life, some of the stories that we used to talk about, whether we're sitting in a cockpit or sitting in the back of operations office in Great Falls, Montana. Neil, what are some of the comparison titles of books or movies similar to your book, similar to this book? Neil, that's a tough question. It's a good one, but it's a tough question. I, believe it or not, I'm not much into movies. I think the last one I saw was, and I enjoyed it so much, because it's so real, was I can't even think of the name of it. I think it even had a couple of Oscars. It's a Good Day in the Neighborhood. I think if you remember that show, it was probably the last one we saw. And I'm not really that into television either these days because of all the political stuff on there in between your commercials. But and I still do a lot of writing in here. I kind of listen to the TV. Our Seahawk game, for instance, I enjoy watching them, but it seems like every time I watch them, they lose. So I sit around here in the back and just kind of listen to them. I used to go to the barn out in our other place and turn on the radio and listen to them. And they normally won at that particular time. So I just wanted to give them a chance to win. And I enjoy a lot of it. Reach, tell us a little bit about the story, how the story came first to be. To start with an image, a voice, a concept, a dilemma, or something else. It came with a friend who was a pilot for us, who lived in the same area as my books are. Somebody, I'm telling my wife. my wife, we just had company just walk in the door here and so forth. My son-in-law just walked in the door. But I got my inspiration from the many stories I've heard on Northwest Airlines, on Northwest around Northwest Airlines and so forth. Or some of my stories and experiences on the Pacific Crest Trail in Glacier National Park. Stories I wanted to tell, stories that have been deep in my mind for years and years and years. And now I'm getting a chance to tell them, and it's fun. It really is fun, and to me, it's fun. And with my neighbor Steve reading my books and reading my stories and correcting English in them and grammar in them, but he's also given me ideas from the psychological point of it, and that helps out a lot. Would you share something about yourself that your readers don't know yet? Well, I was a single father of one, of a son who's now a firefighter in Valley Regional Fire Department. And my wife and I, we ended up getting married, and she had a boy and I had a boy, and boy, did we have boys. It was a challenge at first, but we made it through it. We're married 43 years. Just celebrated here a couple weeks ago. So that I don't think readers know too much about. She was originally from Montana. She didn't know much. She wasn't too acquainted with my travels and my experiences. Our first honeymoon trip internationally to Spain and my Palma de Mallorca, we lost our bags. We're airline employees. In fact, all of us in the group, there was 8 of us in the group, and we all lost the bags. Thank you. I appreciate it, Parlo. We have people that come and go in this house all the time. They come see Linda and so forth. And that's our son-in-law just arrived in from California. I do a lot of my writing. I kind of sit down during the daytime and write, but I do a lot of my writing after my wife goes to bed at night. And normally I hit the sack probably about after midnight. Last night it was 1 o'clock in this morning. But I do a lot of my writing and I go through everything. Thanks. Nice book, Romeo. Romeo, Ralph Zalbady. I wonder if these are the regular names, but they're really hard to pronounce. So thank you very much. I appreciate the questions. Yeah, I do most of my writing when it kind of quiets down around here, and I don't really have to get up and do something and cook a meal and so forth. And I enjoy it. It gives me time when the television's all quiet and so forth. I came up with the title of my first book. In fact, I came up with the title of both of them, Beyond the Shadows of Sawtooth Ridge. The Sawtooth Ridge is a real ridge. It's the Sawtooth Ridge is located on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. I've team roped up there and fished up there and hunted into the back country of the Bob Marsh Wilderness, which is behind the Sawtooth Ridge. It's a very, very beautiful area. David Letterman lives up in that area. I don't really know why he chose it because the winters are very harsh. Thank you, kids. I have not enough words to compliment your great artwork. That's how wonderful it is. I don't know whether you're talking about the covers or you're talking about myself. The covers are really great. Rachel does a beautiful job, and my get a kick out of my original publisher says, "Oh, we got books, we got covers we can use that." And I said, "No. I want Rachel to do it." So, how did I get my current position? Well, 38 years in Northwest Airlines, 13 years at the Griffin School District, and a lot of fishing, a lot of traveling up and down Pacific Crest Trail all the way from the Columbia River Gorge up to almost Canada, traveling back and forth across the Continental Divide in Montana on the eastern front of the Rockies. A lot of my experiences come from eastern Montana, where I was raised on a cattle ranch out there, 14,000 acres, and was 9 miles. The land laid 9 miles east, 9 miles north, and 9 miles south, and 9 miles west. And my grandfather never told a story about there was 640 acres that was right in between going south. It was down in the coulee, and he wouldn't tell anybody that that was somebody else's place. What was the most helpful in helping you learn to write? Which was more helpful or less helpful? I think belonging to the Writers Club here in Jubilee City, or Jubilee is our retirement community. We have probably about 20 authors, and them giving me, encouraging me, and them telling me, oh, this is the way it's done, and so forth. We have a lot of authors that start writing their family histories, and next thing you know, they're being published. So it's kind of neat to see. Airplane. Now explain that airplane. I'm curious to know why is an airplane on both covers of your book. Is it because of your background? No, it is not. Well, yes and no. I worked for an airline for 38 years. This one here, Larry Becker, is a 747. Larry Becker, after he came back from Vietnam, after he kind of recovered and so forth, that was his airplane, the 747. That's what he flew for the airlines, was the 747. So that is the queen of the skies. And the reason this airplane is on it is it's kind of out of the glare there, is an E6 Prowler. And that's Joni's airplane. And that's the airplane that they have up here at Woodby Island Naval Station. And that's the one that she's supposed to, in fiction wise, she's flying. So, and that's that's our airplanes. And kids, also, your writing deeply connects with me. I encourage you to keep writing. Oh yes, I'm anxious to get this next story about Larry's wife on. She's a little bit more. She's had a little bit more different life than the other two characters in my book has. Her character, she was raised, first time she met Larry was she was a junior in high school, and her father was a cattle buyer, and they went up to Larry's grandfather's ranch so he could buy his his grandfather's cattle. He was a cattle buyer in Montana. And that again is based on a true character, even though it's fiction. And she's his daughter. She goes along that morning, and that's the first time she saw her Larry, and fell in love with him and his writing. She ended up kind of competing with him in high school rodeo and later on in college rodeo through the years. And she kind of kept track of him because eventually, after she left the rodeo, after 2 years, she came home, and she met Larry and his new wife in airport one day, her future wife in the airport one day. And they had been on a layover. She was a flight attendant. He was a pilot for the airplane, for the company. And she kind of kept track of Larry through the years, and ended up having Eve, when Larry was in prison, come out to her small ranch in Montana, and they got to know each other pretty good in a couple of weeks. So it got it's interesting. It's really interesting. It's her first marriage is involved, her problems with men, and even though I've been around a lot of ladies who've had problems with men, it's there. Uh, that was such, yeah, catch. Thank you. That was such a thought-provoking content. Uh, I think I'm kind of thinking for just a moment here. It's getting towards the end here, but a short thing is Eve, which the book is about now, a new book, which will be coming out after the first year, I hope, when I get to finish it. Her mother takes her up to the Blackfoot Indian Reservation. She's half Blackfoot and half German, and it's kind of interesting to see her reaction after her partying and her enjoying life on the rodeo circuit. She comes home and tries to keep on partying, and her mother says, "This has got to stop." So they visit a relative up in a place called Browning, Montana, and that's kind of she couldn't figure out that was her, but it was. But anyhow, that's what I'm trying to do: give people something to entertain and something to watch. I think that's just about it for the day. Thank you for staying with me. I appreciate the question. Boy, I do enjoy the questions. Sorry on some of the names, I probably butchered them. But from the Pacific Northwest, on the edge of the Puget Sound, it's raining today and it's cold out there. So take care and hope that you have a great rest of the day and the rest of the evening. Talk to you tomorrow afternoon and wish you the best.